friends, Kris here. We've got a good start on our theme, Just Thinking. And while we're on that, let me ask this on Just Thinking. Just who do you think you are? Because whoever you think you are is who you are. That's what it says in Proverbs 23 and verse 7. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. And the key to that verse is not what you think in your head. You may see yourself one way, but down in the heart, what's going on way down on the inside? Who do you think you are? Somebody asked Jesse Duplantis that question, just who do you think you are? And his pat answer is, how much time do you have? Because he knows who he is. You need to know who you are. Paul said in 1 Corinthians 15 and verse 10, by the grace of God, I am what I am. Now, none of us can say, I am that I am. That's God's position. But when you know him and know who you are in him, you can say, I am what I am, and I am who I am. Now, who do you think you are? At age 12, Jesus said, I must be about my Father's business. He was in business at age 12, co-owner in the business, a joint heir with God. And it wasn't until chapter 3 at age 30 that the Father said, this is my beloved Son in whom I'm well pleased. So he had the identity before he had the possession of it. Second, you shouldn't think more highly of yourself than you ought to think. That's what it says in Romans 12:3. You're supposed to think soberly, according as God has dealt to every man the measure of faith. You know, some people, who do you think you are? You think you're high and mighty? You think yours doesn't stink? You think you're God? Somebody asked that. Well, most people don't. But in the parable in Luke chapter 18, there's a Pharisee that prayed thus with himself. He must have thought he was God. 1 Corinthians 10 and verse 12, let him that thinks he stands take heed lest he fall. And in Psalm 50 and verse 21, you thought that you were altogether such a one as myself. You know, a lot of people think they're just like God, but God's thoughts are higher than our thoughts. You're not God. But on the flip side, number 3, nor should you think more lowly of yourself than you ought to think. When he says love your neighbor as yourself, that predicates or that assumes a certain amount of self-love. Since I lost my wife back in November, I'm bunking with myself. I'm bunking with me. Listen, do you like you? If you live in the same house and have to live with you, you ought to at least get along with the person you're bunking with. Moses said, who am I? Oh, Moses, you don't know who you are? He thought he was a murderer on the run. He thought that he was just a stammering buffoon. But no, God said, I'm going to send you to Pharaoh. I think and I know that you have everything within you to accomplish what I've called you to do. Start understanding who you are. And then number 4, I've got to ask a question. Oh, you think you're somebody? Well, you better think you're somebody, because if you don't think you're somebody, nobody else is going to think you're somebody. You remember the woman with the issue of blood touched the hem of Jesus' garment in Luke 8 and verse 46, and Jesus said, somebody has touched me. He's in the business of turning zeros into heroes, turning nobodies into somebodies. She was nobody because she couldn't afford a doctor. She'd been kicked out of the temple because of her issue of blood. But listen, Jesus saw her as somebody, and you need to do the same. And let me wrap this up. Number 5, don't look in the mirror. Look in the Word. 2 Corinthians 3 and verse 18, we all with open face, beholding as in a glass or as in a mirror, the glory of the Lord, are transformed from glory to glory into that same image by the Spirit. Now, see who you are according to the Word. Let's look at some people. Mephibosheth, who do you think you are? 2 Samuel 9 and verse 8, what is thy servant that you should look upon a dead dog as I? Look at him curled up in the corner, acting like a dog, more crippled in his mind than he was in his muscles. Or think about David when he said to Saul, why do you come to seek a flea like me? 1 Samuel 24 and verse 14 say that, a flea like me. That's not a very good image. And when you think about the Israelites, when in Numbers 13 and verse 34, where it said, or verse 33, we were in our sight as grasshoppers, and so are we in their sight. Listen, you see yourself as a flea, you see yourself as a dead dog, you see yourself as a grasshopper, pretty soon you shrink to the dimensions of your vision. Just like the verse in the song that said, would he devote that sacred head for such a worm as I? Get off the worm's eye view. Get on the bird's eye view. See yourself the way God sees you. I hope you're enjoying this series on Just Thinking. Tune in tomorrow. We've got another message, and have a great day in Christ.